welcome to Adobe Live's Adobe Spotlight, where we like to bring you the movers and shakers of the industry. And speaking of movers, this isn't just any spotlight, this is the motion spotlight. That's right, we have the Emmy Award-winning visual storyteller, Deanna Hong. Deanna, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing wonderfully. Thank you so much. And I know that me and the rest of the chat definitely want to delve into your background and find out more about you, especially the tips and tricks that you're going to be telling us about. But we gotta do a little bit of chat talk first. So I'm speaking to you lot out there. Hello, Wade, Penny, Oliver, Brem, welcome on in. You're in the perfect space if you're looking to learn some amazing things from our Emmy Award-winning Deanna Hong. I feel like we just need to apply that title to Deanna forever. Just put the little badge on there. But if you're interested and you haven't yet subscribed to Adobe Live, please do. That way you can find out in advance about these wonderful streams and stay involved with our community. And if you have any questions at any point for Deanna, make sure you pop them down in the chat and I will get them to her. But on with the show. Deanna, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you kind of got into video editing as a whole?
Such a broad question, and I actually really struggle with this question always. I think, okay, so broad strokes, I would say that I am a videographer slash visual storyteller. I am primarily an editor. I actually wouldn't say that. I'd say my best skill is editing, and I'm most comfortable editing, but I also direct produce, I also shoot, hence more of the videographer title. So I was the team videographer for UCLA Gymnastics for 8 years. And so this is my website here that we have up. You can see this actually, I really need to update my website, but this is some of the work I've done over my career. A lot of variety between I would say 95% of the work that I'm known for is gymnastics. But I've also done a variety of other sports, done some music videos, um, I just finished well, I guess that's also sports. I just finished a Netflix series on track and field sprinters. So a lot of sports, but also a lot of music adjacent sort of things. And then I also have my Instagram here. I did put out a documentary back around Christmas, which is another sports one, gymnastics one, with a friend of mine, Becky Downey, who is a two-time British Olympian. And yeah, so just you kind of scroll through my Instagram, I guess most of
And
it.
while we're scrolling through your Instagram, especially because you are a videographer of the videographer of the highest, why have you chosen video for your medium for storytelling? Is it just something that drew you to it, or was there a moment that you were like, ah, okay, I know I can tell a story, I know I can tell it visually? What came about?
Yeah, I would say I've always been attracted to video because I think it's a medium that allows more complex storytelling. I really admire photographers and I do some photography just for fun as a hobby, or I've done, yeah, mostly as a hobby. But I feel like it's so hard to be a photographer because especially in the world of sports, if you don't get the right exact moment, then you're missing the entire, this iconic moment that just happened. You could be a split second off and you don't have the moment. I feel like video gives you a little bit of leeway because even if you're not in focus, if you get it back in focus within like half a second, then you're good. And it's not like you messed up this shot forever. Um, but video also, I mean, I really enjoy diving deeper into different conversations, being able to talk about more complex issues or more complex stories. And I think video for me has always been a medium that allows me to do that in a more just elaborate way than a photo would be able to. It just kind of gives me more time. I think I just talk a lot and I just want a way to talk more.
Okay. Hey, that sounds legit to me. Speaking of, you mentioned Netflix earlier on. Would you be able to walk us through your journey as a budding videographer in the beginning to the Emmy Award-winning visual storyteller that you are today?
Yeah, the irony of that is actually that I would say I got the Emmy quite early in my career. And it's kind of funny because I have the Emmy, like my name is on it. I'm very proud of it, but I also feel like so just for context, I won it when I worked with NBC Olympics during the 2016 Rio Olympics. I was part of their digital team for that. And so we won an Emmy for like best transmedia coverage, or I don't know. I don't even remember them as well.
Okay.
But this was in 2016. I was like a few years out of school. It was very early on. And I think a lot of what I've done since then has been a lot more just things that I've been involved with at a much higher level. So things I've directed or produced, whereas I was an AP on the Olympics when I did this back in 2016. So it's funny because I almost feel like it's a misnomer sometimes to call myself an Emmy winner, but I do have an Emmy technically, and I know for uh just like career reasons, I should definitely throw that around a little bit.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I've been fortunate also to be a part of a lot of Emmy nominated or winning productions that I just technically wasn't on the right team to be. Like, for example, in 2019, I worked on the Women's World Cup. They won an Emmy or two for that. I was an editor on that, but technically the editing or the team that won the Emmy was like the transmedia content one. Or then also 2021, I was a producer on Golden, which is a Peacock docuseries about gymnastics, and we were nominated, but we didn't win.
Hmm.
So there's been like a lot of close calls or like close brushes since with Emmys, but yeah, I can't seem to get another one.
It's okay. It's okay. Look, just make sure you keep polishing the one that you have. I think
Yeah,
that's what's important.
yeah,
And speaking of some processes of things, let's step and talk about some Adobe tools and processes.
yes.
So for the people in the
Absolutely.
chat, especially people that are really inspired by Deanna, make sure you've got your questions ready because this is the area that you're going to be able to learn how Deanna conceptualizes, brings her ideas to fruition with execution. This the shortcuts comes in, with the tips and tricks comes in. So if there's anything that we go over or something that Deanna hasn't mentioned that you want to know more about, make sure you pop your chat down below. Welcome, Alessandra, and everybody else that's just joined in today. We are very, very lucky that we've got this amazing motion creator. Look, all the different titles that I'm giving Deanna today. Wonder if we can smooth them all together. This amazing motion creator, videographer, all the wonderful goodness that's going to teach us some stuff. So, Deanna, since you do quite a lot, hence all the titles I just gave you, how do you use Adobe products in your workflow, especially Premiere Pro?
Yes, so I would say Premiere Pro is probably 99.99% of my work, especially in terms of Adobe usage. I dabble a little bit in Photoshop, Lightroom, a little bit of After Effects for certain projects, but Premiere is really my bread and butter. I would say, honestly, of all of my life skills, I think Premiere Pro is my number one life skill.
Cool.
Like I think I've done my 10,000 hours in Premiere. Um, so yeah, this is you know, day in, day out part of my life. I've been on Premiere actually since my very first, my very second internship. Um, Kind of before Premiere became as industry standard as it was now. So this was back in 2010. So yeah, I've just had a like a lifelong love affair with Premiere. And yeah, I just finished a project that actually used a different NLE, and I was just like, I really every single day I was like, I really miss Premiere.
It's nice to know that you're dreaming of Premiere on occasion.
Yes.
Would you be able to show us your, I see the awesomeness. I'm looking at all the colors of your items in your timeline there. Could you share your creative process from idea to execution?
Yes. So here is I recently did this project for Angel City FC, which is the professional women's soccer team in LA. They asked me to do this walkout video for them, which is it's like a hype video that plays as the team is walking out onto the field. So it's supposed to get the players hyped, the stadium hyped. It's supposed to be a really high energy edit. And I was really honored that they asked me to cut this for them this year. Um, so I don't know if I should play a little bit of it or if I should show kind of where I would have started in
Um,
tackling this.
well, how about we see some of it first and then we can go back and talk about how the idea started and what came about, unless you'd like to talk while it's playing. And if there was something in particular that pops up where you're like, okay, so you had this video clip, you already knew from the start that, okay, I really want this at the beginning to induce the hype.
Maybe what
So,
I'll do actually then is not show the video yet, because the brief I was given was basically, here's the song and here's the footage. And there was actually no script really of what I needed to do with that. So I think that was it can be a little intimidating to have such a blank canvas to start with. And so really I had to just I really started with the music and then figured out what the different parts of the song inspired for me, or what I felt made sense to be visually happening to really, just kind of embellish or really take advantage of all of the great kind of dynamics that this song gives. So this song, it's actually really cool. Angel City gets custom music written for them. So this song is actually by Leslie Powell and Ali Stone. Leslie is like I would say a friend of mine that I've known for years, and I've used a lot of her. I've been fortunate to do a lot of projects that are using her, well, a lot of projects that have used her music, and it's awesome because there's just a lot of dynamics to play with, and I think it leads to a really energizing and dynamic video edit. So maybe what I'll do is actually start with playing a little bit of the song, so we can hear because this is literally all I had to start with was like a blank canvas and a song. So I'll start playing.
Feel that energy, you're ready for the takedown. Open the gates, cause the savage about to come out.
I'm just gonna pause right there. Generally, when I'm given, because basically what I was told was this needs to be 45 seconds. Here's the song. Here's a bunch of footage. Try to fill these 45 seconds and make it exciting. So what I do is I listened to this quite a few times and identified the parts of the music that, for me, I was like, okay, it's building to something big here, and this moment, this part of the music leads to a moment. So I kind of identified where the big moments are first and built around those. So here you kind of have, a little intro. This is the first verse, and I like kind of listening through. I'm just going to hop around a little bit to figure out what moments feel like they inspire some sort of energetic, like transition or something that I can visually play off of.
right.
Okay, so here, sorry, you go from the verse into kind of like a pre-chorus here.
I ain't stopping once I hit the ground. Call me daddy, cause his body's about to show out. I'ma say, I'm a goddess, this a showdown. I'm a boss, what you want, you up in my house. What you got now, tell me what you got now. What you got now, tell me what you got now. Here she comes, got that fire in my veins, about to come undone.
Okay, so I'll play there, but so you can see there's really a lot of levels to play with in terms of where the energy of the music is, what the percussion is doing, or when it all drops out. And that really informs me of like, how should I visually be matching this in this moment? So that was kind of where we started. And then they gave me, Angel City did a shoot with all their players where they had them in a studio basically and got a bunch of great footage of them. So the way I started was I did a string out of all of the players' footage.
Oh, can I ask you, Deanna, before you continue, for those of us that don't know, these are wonderful words like string out. What is a string out?
String out, actually, I think some people use differently, because I've been on shows where string out is something a lot more specific. For me, I basically just laid out all my raw footage into one sequence so that I can easily scrub through and identify shots that I like.
Okay.
In other projects, string outs can be a lot more further along in the process, I would say, where you have a lot more of the kind of like, if you have a script that you're working off of, it's kind of a really, really pre-rough cut almost. In this case, I just meant I threw all the footage in a timeline so that I can see it without having to individually click on every clip and be like, what's in this?
Okay.
So for me, it was easiest to just have all the players in one timeline. And I used like chapter markers here just so I could easily put all the players' names here. So one of the things that was important with this video is to make sure everybody's represented. And so this helped me to figure out, if I'm watching it, I'm like, hey, I haven't seen this player in a while, or if I know I haven't seen this player, then I know where I can find them pretty easily. And they all shot on 2 different sets each. So they did this like cityscape set. And then they also were in this room with the color changing. So what I did was you can see my clip colors here. I made kind of this violet color, or I don't know what Premiere calls it, maybe magenta. I don't remember what color Premiere calls this. I think they call it magenta. I labeled them magenta so that I knew, because I knew that when I edited, I would generally not really mix the cityscape and the blank wall sets together. I would kind of do them in sections. So that way I could easily find, hey, I want a bunch of players in a row on this blank wall. This way I can easily figure out, okay, of this whole player, all of her blank wall stuff is in this part of her selects.
And can I ask in advance, because I'm sure somebody will ask, how do you color your videos? Like, how did you
Color
make it
grade?
magenta?
Oh, okay. Yeah, my labels. So I'm really big on labels in Premiere. And so one way you can do it is you right click label and you have this whole array of colors that you can choose from. If I wanted to change the color here, what I actually do is I map shortcuts for them because I am really dependent on labels. So what I'm doing is I have my shortcuts are all command plus a number. So command 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this allows me to really easily organize my footage visually so that when you have a huge timeline, you kind of have an idea of what you're looking at. Sometimes I'll often do in other kinds of projects, I'll do my B-roll in orange, or I'll do, music tracks in green, but VO tracks in purple or something like that, just so that when I'm looking at the timeline, I can kind of get a lay of the land of where I am in time.
Thank you for the shortcut tip as well. That's actually really, really helpful too.
Yeah, I'm really big on shortcuts. I love shortcuts. I'm happy to talk about those all day long. I mostly have mapped all of my shortcuts to work with just my left hand because I often edit with a mouse in my right hand. So a lot of the Premiere shortcuts that already exist in Premiere, the default shortcuts, I've actually remapped to my left hand so that I can kind of not have to lose any time going between the mouse and the keyboard with my right hand.
Now, I know we're going to talk a little bit more about your shortcuts and other tricks slightly later, but I'm really excited about that. So thank you for telling us about that too.
Yeah. Okay, so once I have all the footage laid out and I kind of know, okay, this is the footage I have to work with. I've got stuff from these two different sets. Sometimes initially, I mean, there's a ton of footage here. I think this timeline is 2 hours long. So sometimes as I'm skimming through, if I see something I really like and like I definitely want to use that, I'll bump it up. I'll pull it up to the second row here, just so that I can visually easily get to it. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember I really like this shot. I need to make sure to get it in somewhere. So for example, this shot, this is team captain Allie Riley. There's this great, she does this inhale, exhale, and I think as she's exhaling, they shot this in high speed, so it's very slow. But as she's exhaling, she opens her eyes. And I was like, this feels like a good moment. I could put this somewhere. For me, it felt like they're just getting ready to go out on the field. This is a great like last breath before you walk out there. And so I was like, I know I want it to go near the end. So I'm gonna see, I usually am really good about versioning my timeline. Let me see an early iteration of it. I think I placed it probably, I placed it at the end here. And I think I'm gonna play the music so you can kind of see where it goes in terms of energetically what it's. I'm just gonna actually disable everything before that so you can just see where that one shot lives and see where I placed it and why. So I'm gonna play it.
Bring them out now.
So just the music there, I remember listening to it being like, this feels like a great spot for that exhale. And so there's little moments like that I identify early on and build. So you can see actually in my timeline here, there's a lot of stuff missing. There's this whole section that's just called TBD. I really start from which portions of the music are inspiring me first, which kind of are like, this is a great moment to pull off this visual, to play with visually here, and just kind of start building from there.
We have a comment also from Suraj that the music is very cool.
Please, all credit to Leslie Powell and Ali Stone. They make really dope music. So I was honestly it's really fun as a editor when you get to play with really dynamic music that gives you a lot to work with. So I feel really grateful that I get to work with this track. I can't remember how long I'm doing this demo section for. Should I keep going?
Well, I would love to, because I don't feel like we've finished the whole idea conceptual. I'm trying to squeeze you for everything you've got. So,
Okay. Yes.
I know we've gone from the beginning. You meditate with the music for a little bit, is what I gathered. When you find certain bits of music that really pop to you, you start with them first, and then afterwards, do you just casually go and fill in the pieces, or do you start from the beginning after that?
I would say if there's spots that really stand out to me as like, this is a great moment, then I'll try to build those moments first because I want to reserve my best footage for those moments. And that way, place them in the timeline first, and then kind of the other parts that I maybe, I wouldn't say are filler, but I would say, sometimes you have a real money shot and you need it to go in this moment. I don't want to be tempted to use it too early, so to speak. So I try to place it where I'm like, it's gonna live here, and now I can't use it anywhere else in the video. So for example, there's this great lyric where the lyric is "Call me Daddy," and so I asked my friend Jen, who is the director of production for Angel City, who tasked me with editing this video. I was like, which player do you think goes with a moment that says "Call me Daddy"? And so she told me Sarah Gordon. So I build around stuff like that, like lyrical moments that I feel. Actually, no. Okay, it's this moment here. Lyrical moments that I feel lend to a certain, just a highlight of a player or things like that. I really try to be intentional about where I'm putting things, and so I can play that moment for you.
Yes.
So I'll just the lyric is. I'm gonna start actually. I'll just play it without the sound or without the visuals, and then we can hear the lyric, and then I'll show you how I built it. So.
Full force, I ain't stopping once I hit the ground. Call me daddy, cause his body's about to show out. I'm a saint.
So you can hear it's like there's the whole "Call Me Daddy" lyric, and then it's also building towards another transition. So it felt like a moment that it can be building, and then it kind of moves into something else. So I know I started with, okay, this is the player that Jen wanted me to match to this lyric. So I found her most daddy looking shots, basically. I was like, great, I'm gonna build around her. And so I laid out her shots first. So
Call me daddy, cause his body's about to show out.
so it just felt like a moment that you needed to have like your big kind of stars that really have a lot of like I don't think I can say on this stream, but a lot of confidence, you know what I mean?
Yeah. We get the vibe.
Yeah. And so I put them in this moment here where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna, and also I'm trying to integrate the team at every aspect as well, and also with the music, what the music's giving me. So it's a lot of just percussively bringing shots on, and then kind of using it to, you'll see the music lends itself to a transition. So we're going to transition from these cityscape shots to the stuff in the other room. So I'm gonna play through this again.
Stopping once I hit the ground. Call me daddy, cause his body's about to show out. I'm a saint, I'm a goddess, this a showdown. I'm a boss, what you want, you up in my house.
And I think one thing that was fun is Angel City had kind of some guidelines on visual effects that they are trying to integrate this season.
Okay.
So here they have like the soccer field pitch lines here, the center starting circle. And so I was trying to figure out ways to integrate that just to kind of add another visual element. So here, I thought this was cool, putting these two side by side. They're sisters. They're kind of a big deal in women's soccer right now. They just, I think, made their debut as the first sisters to ever play for the same NWSL team. So like, okay, I'm going to put them together. And then I kind of have the circle. I was trying to figure out what to do with the circle. So it's like, I'm going to rotate the circle and then have it split them open. So let me play this.
Open the gates, cause the savage.
So yeah, there's just this like little bit of motion where it's turning. And then once we hit, once it gets to center, it'll split the screen open.
Open the gates, cause the savage.
Amazing.
And also the lyric there is "open the gates." So I'm a little literal where I'm like, great, I'm going to open something up and
Bringing the 80s back. Yes, we like this. That's incredible. Okay, that's awesome, because I think we might have once seen somebody use nesting before, but seeing how you actually incorporated it in, especially since You knew what the client wanted. They wanted to add some more visuals in. You found a way to make it work on 2 or 3 different levels, it sounds like, really. The visual, the lyrics. It's a really, really useful way for somebody, especially when they're just starting out and they are trying to weave a story, but they're not sure what thing they should attach to. Showing that you're able to go for any of them / all of them at the same time is quite freeing. So thank you for that. Wade said subtle but nice, and Alessandra said I'm grooving and moving over here. So we're digging the music and we're digging the visuals. For those that want to see this video fully, where can we go and check it out?
So I'm actually not sure if it's available online, but you definitely can check it out if you go to an Angel City home game in LA. I assume they'll put it online at some point. This actually just premiered yesterday. The team had their home opener yesterday, so it played for the first time in the stadium. And I assume they'll put it online at some point, but I'm actually not sure.
Okay, so basically for the chat, make sure you follow Deanna Hong, please. So that way, I'm sure Deanna's probably gonna like put a story up and be like, look, and we'll be like, oh, that's how we know. That's how we know. Joshua said subtle and so effective, incredibly effective. I don't know. I feel like it's nice for it to be in your face, but then it's also nice for it to be like, oh, I didn't even realize it was happening. Like, yes. Speaking of the effectiveness, since you've been using Adobe, and I know you've been using After Effects, a little bit of the other Adobe products as well, since you do work with other people, how have you found your creative freedom and your efficiency when working in Premiere, especially when you're working with other people? Because I know we've got dynamic link and things like that, but have you found it quite easy for you to continue to get your process and your ideas down using Premiere Pro and working with others for them to either give you something for you to add it in easily and quickly?
Yeah, I would say with relation to this project, it's interesting because I work occasionally with Angel City as a freelancer. So I know that later on in the season, especially if they end up trading players or signing new players, they need to update this video. So I knew when I built it that I wanted to make it as easy as possible for another editor, if for some reason I'm unavailable at the time they need those updates, for another editor to be able to come in and make the updates as needed as quickly as possible. Because I've definitely gone into other people's projects before and been like, I have no idea how you achieved what this is, and I don't know how to change it. So I did definitely build a lot of these effects with like, okay, I know that at some point these might need to change, so I'd like to make it as organized and painless as possible. So for example, with these nests here, like this effect with the ball or with the circle turning, and then, for some reason, if you needed to replace these athletes with other ones, they're both actually living in their own nests. So you can see you've got one sister on one side, one sister on the other side. If you open it up, I actually have, so I think what I actually did was I built this all and then I created the nest afterward, because the circle thingy that's turning is actually already has the motion keyframed onto it. So I think I like did these together and then I built them in individual nests somehow. But basically now all I would need to do is just replace this layer here with another player if I needed to for some reason. So just as an example, I'm just going to throw this clip in here just so we can see what happens. I'm just going to move these up just so I don't actually replace her. Say we wanted to use this shot for some reason. Okay, it's not in the right place, but we can zoom. No, trying to move my screen share zoom thing.
While Deanna is getting this into the right place, I feel like what she said so far is really, really helpful for the rest of us, especially when you're working with others. Yes, you might understand how you've laid it out, but if you're working with other people, try to make sure that it's easy for others to understand. It will be much quicker and smoother workflow that way.
So what I did was I replaced in the nest this shot here of Alyssa Thompson. I just replaced it. I just grabbed another shot on my timeline just so we can see how it worked. So now when we go back to the main timeline, since it's in the nest, wait, hold on, I need to disable her, sorry. You'll see that that shot is now replaced and the circle is still actually turning at the correct time and it'll split just as we had before. So amazing. Just having these assets kind of in a pretty easy to follow way is really helpful with, even for myself, because if I come back into this project in a month's time, 2 months' time, I'm going to forget exactly how I did all of these things. So I kind of sometimes think about prepping projects for future me even, and treat my future self as a stranger who's never seen this project before.
That's really useful too, because then it works on both fronts. For one, if you haven't seen it for a while and you didn't want to write down any like proper physical notes. And two, if you end up halfway through having to give it to somebody else, that's really, really helpful. So as a summarization, are there any tips that you would suggest for people that are working with others in making their video files a little bit easier to handle?
I would say a lot of times actually, there's a lot of things in Premiere that we'll do sometimes where, for example, if I was trying to prep this for another editor, I might actually rename this track like replace player here or something, just so that when they open up this nest, they're like, oh, that's where the player should go. I'll also do stuff like with chapter markers sometimes. I'll put like, I don't know, if I have something that I need to communicate to another editor that might open this, maybe it's like fix music here or something. This also, I use it for notes to myself, but I'll make a chapter marker in the timeline and I'll kind of, that way there's a little note without needing to write in a separate document or an email or something. And they'll see this, they'll be like, fix music here, something is wrong with the music that I need to take care of. So that's kind of how I'll communicate again to myself or to other editors. And then I also, collaboration wise, I use team projects a lot. I think I would also like to use productions, but I haven't been on a project that's used them, and I want to take the time to learn how to set it up all correctly. So I'm not like the best versed in how productions works exactly. Team projects I really like. As long as you and your colleagues have the same media on your own hard drives, then it's pretty seamless in terms of you make your cuts and then you send your changes to the cloud basically. And then they can update their changes and they see your cuts. So that's been a really nice way for me to work with like assistant editors where I make sure we have the same footage and I'll be like, hey, can you make me a rough cut of this? And then once they're done, they can just sync it and then I'll have them instantly. So I really do like Adobe Team Projects for that.
Fantastic. Also, Joshua said, I'm really enjoying this project breakdown, which is exactly why I've been keeping Deanna inside of this particular project. Because I was like, okay, I know we kind of want to get everything as much as we can get. We're going to get as much as we can. So as much as we can are there lesser known Premiere Pro features that you tend to use that are your favorites? Or certain shortcuts maybe that you like using? Now, I know you said you move all the stuff to your left hand, but is there any other lesser known Premiere Pro stuff that you tend to use to help you with your work and your workflow?
Yeah, I would say one thing I really like is the close gap feature. Sounds really random, but basically if I know I've gone through all these selects here and I've moved everything I like up to V2, what I could do now to make this easier and not have to deal with a 2-hour timeline is I can just copy everything that's on V2 and I'm just going to paste it back here, but you can see it's still spanned over 2 hours. And so what I do is I use the close gap shortcut, which I have mapped to Option G, that actually closes all the empty space between these. So now these are all my favorite shots all in one little section rather than spread across 2 hours. So that's something I end up using a lot, especially during the selects process where most of my, I work in documentary, so most of my footage is not going to be used. And so if I'm able to just pull some stuff up physically and then easily come up with a way to condense it, then I'll just have the best of the stuff that I know I want to work with. Love close gap. That's also in the edit menu. No, it's not. It's in the clip. I don't actually know where it is. It's in a menu somewhere.
I see it. Yep. There it is.
It's in the sequence menu. I have a shortcut for it, which I really use often and highly recommend. Another shortcut Premiere function that I find really helpful is called scene edit detection. And this is helpful for me, especially because Angel City, they do this great thing where they make what we call a melt at the end of the year with their best clips of this player for this whole season. So this is Allie Riley. This is her melt where it's actually just a huge, really, it was a 15-minute clip of all the best footage of her from last season. And so what I do is I put this into a timeline. So this is just the folder here with all these clips in it. I'm just gonna mute the sound because I don't want it to spike on the stream. But you can see it's a whole montage of her different, it's not really a montage, it's just a bunch of clips of her from the whole season. So what you can do is go to, I also forget where, okay, it's here. It's in clip, scene edit detection, which I also have mapped to a shortcut, which is why I don't know where to find it in the menu. If you run scene edit detection, I'll just do it. You have these options. I generally only have this first one on, which is apply a cut at each detected cut point. Because basically, this video is a bunch of clips, but I can't see looking in my timeline where the beginning and end of all those clips are. You can also create a bin of sub clips, which I actually don't really work with the clips much. And you can also make a clip marker at each detected cut point, which I actually find pretty helpful sometimes. In this case, I would just choose this one. You hit analyze. It's going to go for a while. I'm not going to do it on the stream because it does take a while, but I did it here earlier. And so this all is that same clip, but it's all chopped up already for me. And so I know if I just kind of go through the timeline, this is the beginning of each new clip at each cut point. So that's really helpful too.
Yeah, especially because you were saying that you do documentaries. I can see how this would be super helpful for you to just get that. I don't know if you're going between the front shot and a side shot of somebody talking, at least you can instantly piece all the bits together. That's really cool.
Yeah. Or if you need to do, if someone gives you a video, for example, that's like 16 by 9, and you need to turn it into a social video, you can use Premiere's auto reframe features. Sometimes I prefer to do it manually, just especially if the shots are quick, so that Premiere's not like trying to map everything around. And so I'll often do this, and then I can manually move each shot change. Like it'll tell me where the shot changes are, so I can manually move each shot individually. So I do find scene edit detection to be really helpful in Premiere.
And for those that might be very interested in the auto reframe that you mentioned, would you be able to show us where that is? You don't have to turn one over, but might be nice just to see where it is.
Yes. Auto reframe. So for example, I made this whole video. It's in 16 by 9. Say, for example, they're like, we want a 9 by 16 version of this. You can go to find the sequence in your project, right click, and auto reframe sequence. You would tell them what you'd like the new sequence to be named. The default is they just add the dimensions here, which is very helpful. And you choose what aspect ratio you'd like it to be in. You can have, so this I haven't really worked with too much, but I think with soccer, for example, a lot of stuff is happening in frame. And the hard thing with auto reframe is that with sports really is that you're often using the whole frame in when you have a widescreen video. So I would generally for sports choose faster motion because I'm telling Premiere to keyframe between locations faster. So that way, hopefully it'll follow the ball or whatever, needs to be happening. And then, yeah, you either can nest the clips or not nest the clips before you do this. If I hit create, I think it'll take a long time because there's a lot of media in this timeline, so I'm not gonna do it. But it will basically spit out a 9 by 16 sequence where it's automatically reframed all this for me. So for example, a shot like pretty center framed in all of these. I honestly don't know how it would handle this shot. Okay, I've done actually a lot of center framing, so this is not that great. Okay, that's also center framed. Here, for example, if I just made this sequence into a 9 by 16, it's like going to be like this, and it'll just be the very front of her face, whereas I kind of would want a little more, the frame to be a little more on this side probably. So Premiere would auto reframe all of that for me.
Okay, that's super helpful because I know people are trying to do that. I feel like it's the work is smarter, not harder portion of you've already made something, just change its size a little bit so it can go on the Instagram reel or the TikTok thing or wherever, but that way you don't have to refilm it again. You can just have it auto shape for you. So that's super helpful. And Alessandra just said, wow, I checked your Instagram. Your work is amazing, Deanna.
Thank you so much, Alessandra.
Now, as someone who's got so very many hats, and means you've got extensive experience in editing, how do you continue to challenge yourself and push the boundaries of your editing skills within Premiere Pro?
I think, between now and when I started this career, I think there's a lot more editors. I think content creation is really accessible, which is awesome. But also, I think I actually kind of really struggle sometimes with, the best way to learn new skills is you see someone else do it, you kind of break it down. How do they do this? Watch some tutorials, etc. And, you're always constantly adding new tools or transitions or effects or styles to your arsenal. But I think sometimes I can struggle with that because a lot of times I'll watch, I'll be scrolling on Instagram and I'll see a really cool edit that someone else made, and I'll just be like, oh, I can't do that, or like that's not my style, and I wish I could do it as well as them or whatnot. And I have definitely been through uh a lot of like, I don't know if it's FOMO or like imposter syndrome.
Uh,
Um, but yeah, I think watching other people is definitely the best way to kind of remain inspired and see as other people are innovating and introduce new things that you can be doing in your own work. I think it's also for me important to keep that balance of being able to appreciate other people's work that's amazing, and also keep in mind the aspects of my work that I'm proud of, that I know I excel at. Because maybe I think I'm not really the flashiest editor. This video is kind of flashy, but it's actually like, compared to other things, I've seen a lot more thrown on top of videos. And I tend to be a pretty clean, like I like clean visuals. And so sometimes I'll see something that has like a lot of, that's very effectively working with graphics overlays and whatnot. And I'll be like, maybe I should be doing that. But I think, yeah, just kind of remembering my strengths and realizing that no editor is 100% maxed out skills in every single aspect of editing, So I know that I really am proud of my storytelling capabilities. I feel like I work really well with music, really well with emotion. And, I kind of have to remind myself of these are the things that I am proud of myself for, and I can definitely take inspiration from other people, but I don't need to like put myself down for not editing the same way or doing
I
the same thing.
think you've brought up a really important part or important fact of creators in general there, that regardless of wherever we've been put based on what we do, being inspired by other people, but knowing the difference between being inspired by people and comparing yourself, it's huge. So I think, especially for a lot of us that might not have done what you've done yet, or we really want to, but we haven't gotten there yet, knowing that you can look at other people's work because it might inspire you to do something else, this inspiration is for, but to know that this person's got other inspirations. So their work and your work technically shouldn't really look the same. You've got your whole backstory of like the reason you spoke to us about how you ended up doing this in the first place. That other person's one's completely different. So that means they're not going to show the same kind of stuff. So being able to keep your unique vision as you've got it, which is why we love you, because what you've got, we want to see your vision, if all the inspirations that you've got. But being able to see the unique you in your work is incredible. So that's to you, Deanna, and to you lot in the chat as well. Don't forget.
Very inspiring. That was very touching. Thank you. I think I needed that.
Oh, I'm glad I could help. Also, Kino's got something for you too. Kino said, I like it too, especially how you've used Premiere. It's inspiring.
Oh, thank you.
Now, speaking of inspiring, you've worked on a diverse range of projects. We were speaking about this earlier, from your documentations, documenting gymnastics, to covering major sports events like FIFA World Cup. Can you share a project or a collaboration that holds a special place in your heart? And can you also let us know what's made it memorable for you?
Yeah, I'm really lucky that I've gotten to do quite a really wide variety of different projects. I would say the first thing that comes to mind in terms of project that holds a special place in my heart is, as I said, I worked with the UCLA gymnastics team for 8 years, and kind of similar to this Angel City walkout video, I did quite a few of their intro, we call them intro videos, where it's also the team, it's the video that plays while the team is walking out into the arena. And so I did a few of them for UCLA Gymnastics. It was always kind of like the big project of the year. There's like a lot of pressure on it, actually. And the one that I'm most proud of, I did in 2021. It was actually during the season where there was a lot of restrictions on filming because of the pandemic. So we were not allowed to have any athletes appear in the same frame ever during the video. So we had to film with, I think at the time they had like maybe 21 athletes on the roster. We had one single shoot day, and I actually co-directed this with Valentina V, who anyone watching this may be familiar with if you watch a lot of Adobe content, because Valentina V is actually like, if you open Adobe, it's like her face on the Learn panel. She's a great friend of mine. We actually met at freshman orientation in college. So we go way back. Yeah. And so I was super excited to bring her on for that video. I think I have here, I can try to play a little bit of it. It's this video. I'm gonna like mute it maybe, but play it as it. We can mute it, but like have it play while we talk.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
And so yeah, you can kind of see all these athletes are filmed individually, but there's a lot so this was the most After Effects I've ever used in a project. And there's a lot going on with split screens and trying to create this sense of unity somehow while not being able to actually have the athletes together. And this was actually a crazy shoot day because we had to get through all 20 athletes and they all had an outfit change each. And we had one day, luckily we had, that was Ali and AJ. I don't know if you know them, but they were like Disney Channel musicians that I'm a really big fan of since I was a kid. And then they started making music again as they're older. They actually did the song and were kind enough to let us use it for this video. And so yeah, there's a lot of coordination with like, you can see the people wearing a blue top have a yellow background, and then the yellow tops have a blue background. And we had this crazy spreadsheet of like, okay, who's wearing what color do we need to change the backgrounds to? You can see here, they came in the morning in one outfit, then did the exact same skill later in another outfit. And so there was just a ton of like pre-planning that needed to go into this. And so we had like a very exact list when they all came in of like, okay, you're in these parts of the video and you need to be spinning and pointing in this direction and stuff like that. So it was just like a real labor of love, I think. And I also got, Ali and AJ is one of my favorite musical artists. So it was really an honor to get to work with their track and just make this really cool video in a time where we had such restricted filming access. And I think people were really, like the fans were really excited because I think we tried, we pulled off kind of something that was quite artistic, but also we're able to respect social distancing guidelines and whatnot. And it was like a really big undertaking. That was really fun.
Yeah, it looks like a technical marvel, especially with all of the different pieces that you were saying that had to actually go into it. Plus the Bradley branch I'm thinking of. I like seeing the squares around it. I was like, yes, okay. But that brings me to my next question, which is awesome, actually, because by being made to do a project that's so constricted in a way, that's made you have to think even further out of the box. This, with your sports coverage, your behind the scenes videography, and now your music video editing that you had to do in a very specific way, how has that and all of your experiences influenced your editing style and approach? Like, has this carried on to your later work?
I think since the beginning of my editing career, a really strong, I guess, trademark of my work is, I believe, my musicality. So as I said, I've mostly worked in sports, but I also did quite a few years of music videos. I did a lot of music videos actually. And then a lot of my sports work also, like with this Angel City video that I showed earlier, is essentially a music video because you have a music track and then I'm just making the visuals match it. So for me, it's been really important to be able to integrate my musicality. And I guess I would say I'm a musician in a sense. Like I play guitar, I sang growing up, and then I was actually in an a cappella group in college and I was the beatboxer. So I do have like, I feel it's funny because I can't dance, but I do feel like I have a sense of rhythm, like a really good sense of rhythm. And I think that really informs my editing a lot. And even in other projects, documentary and whatnot, just finding ways to edit musically, I think really I find satisfying. And I know people have mentioned that stylistically, it's like a really big part of my editing. So I think that, that part of my life and my interests and my passions influences my editing. And then at the same time, I think my desire to tell stories and to really take audiences on a journey or viewers on a journey when they're watching of like, I really find it important to have dynamics within a video, whether that's, the same in music, you have different parts where you're a little quieter and it builds to something and then it moves to something else. And I really like the kind of the task of finding out how to guide a viewer through all of those different feelings and emotions and sections, and hopefully building, placing the building blocks in a way that leads to some sort of emotional payoff. If by the end you feel you know, a lot of warmth towards this character and you're really rooting for them, or if you just feel hyped and you want to, you know, scream and run and play soccer, or whatever the goal of it is. I really feel that my I don't know, my desire towards telling beautiful stories really informs the way I edit or the way that I like to construct videos and whatnot.
I think, especially with the last one that we saw, even though you were given a specific task for it, I think that we could definitely see that shining through, especially with all of the work that you've produced. Even this little snippet, which hasn't come out yet, kind of, but like it's been incredible to see your influences and how you've brought your musicality. And yes, I think you're absolutely a musician. You're more than one thing, absolutely a musician. You've definitely been able to keep all of your loves together, which definitely adds to the uniqueness of your work. And speaking of uniqueness, I was wondering, when you're approaching your storytelling, do you treat it differently when you're doing musicians and athletes to your behind the scenes? Is it different? If so, how?
That's an interesting question. I think I would almost say no. And I think one of my strengths, because when I started working in gymnastics, I actually was never a gymnast. A lot of people are really surprised by that because I was so intertwined in that world for so long. And I'm also the size of a gymnast. But I had never been a gymnast. And I think what my strength was in that world is gymnastics is, and any sport is very technical. There's things that are very specific to the people of that sport that only they understand, which over time I learned. But I actually thought I had a really interesting perspective as kind of an outsider that got brought into this world, and that I now understand a lot about gymnastics, but I also understand it from a layman's point of view, because a lot of the gymnasts themselves have been doing this since they were 2, 3 years old. So they don't realize what is odd or unique to them that normal non-gymnastics people don't understand. And I
Right.
felt for me that was really valuable, being able to kind of tell stories in a way to make them accessible to a more general audience. You don't need to have like a very specific gymnastics knowledge. I tried to distill the information in a way that was digestible to a normal audience, but also still respected the sport and did bring in some of, you know, the stuff that I learned along the way with a little bit more complexity, but also in a way that was, again, digestible for normal people. And I felt that was inviting. And I think that really helped UCLA bring in a lot more followers and fans, because I really saw my job as telling these athlete stories as human beings, who they were as people who do gymnastics, rather than just focusing on this girl does this skill and she got this many points, blah, blah, blah. I think for me, same thing with music. I think, yeah, the actors or the musicians, also the actors and the athletes I've worked with, I always try to come from a perspective of telling their stories as human beings who do these activities, but not necessarily focusing so much on getting in the weeds of, you know, like, again, the scores in gymnastics or I don't know, just the technicalities. I actually don't understand the technicalities of music that well. So for me, it's always been a much more holistic way to tell stories, I think.
That's really nice, because especially because you've made it more approachable for everybody that's watching, regardless of where they're coming into it from, either as a videographer or the gymnast, or maybe just someone that likes to watch things, but at least you're still able to tell a story that everyone can get involved in. And we've got a few comments there. Alessandra was saying this was great and so inspiring. Tausi also agrees, and Uma said, heard something about beatboxing. That's cool. I know. If maybe one day Deanna happens to video herself doing some beatboxing to some cool effects, you know, that'd be great. But we're closing up shortly, but I thought this one question might be really, really good for a few people that are sort of edging their way in. Briefly, if you wouldn't mind, how do you approach networking and building relationships within the industry to create opportunities for yourself as a video editor?
I think one thing my mom always told me was, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. So a lot of times there's tons of opportunities that I am maybe underqualified for or feel underqualified for, but I just force myself to ask, because who knows? And so really throughout my career, I've done a lot of just cold reaching out to people and being like, this is what I can offer you. This is the work I've done. I'd be interested in working with you. Is there any opportunity for that? A lot of times they don't answer. And then a lot of times it actually turns out, you know, I get to have this cool opportunity that I wouldn't have had I not decided to reach out and ask. I don't know if we have time for a quick example, but
Well, kind of all work, all experiences, all opportunities. It all falls underneath the same line, I think.
yeah,
Especially your mum is right, by the way. You've really just got to ask because somebody
yeah,
says yes, and then that's the
yeah,
awesome one, like you said.
yeah.
Approver just said, thanks, Deanna. Both works were beautiful.
Thank you.
And as to close this out, Deanna, for people that would like to follow you, find more of your work, and see more of your amazingness, where can they find you?
My Instagram is probably a good place at Deanna Hong. That's probably the main like landing point where I'll post most about any updates in my career. So that's probably the best place.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Devlin said, thank you, Deanna. Interesting work and great advice. Yes, yes, indeed. For everybody else, make sure you stay tuned. Deanna, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence here. I hope you've enjoyed sharing some of your knowledge with us.
I have. Thank you so much for having me. It was great chatting with you.
Thank you. And for everybody else, make sure you stay tuned. There is more stuff, as always, coming up after the break. Bye.